This is India's #1 news network, and you're watching News 9. English news as it should be.
Hello everyone, you're watching Morning Brief at 9 with me, Sakshi Singh Litoria here on News 9. Let's take a look at the top headlines coming in this morning. India-Germany near $8 billion submarine manufacturing deal with technology transfer as German Chancellor Friedrich Merz to visit New Delhi next week. Bangladesh temporarily suspends visa services at its key missions in India, citing security concerns. India may ease curbs on Chinese firms bidding for government contracts as New Delhi and Beijing show signs of warming ties. India's economy seen growing at around 7.5% in 2025 to 26 with upward bias, says SBI, as fiscal deficit stays on track. India steps up push for sovereign GPUs as Union Minister Ashwini Vaishnaw holds talks with Nvidia on local AI hardware manufacturing. US discusses cash payments to Greenlanders in a bid to encourage secession from Denmark and closer ties with Washington. UN chief expresses regret as US moves to withdraw from dozens of UN bodies, including climate and gender agencies. Australia orders Royal Commission probe into Bondi Beach mass shooting that killed 15 at Jewish Hanukkah celebration. Nvidia demands full upfront payment from Chinese buyers for H200 AI chips amid uncertainty over shipment approvals. And here's our top story of the morning. Germany and India are in advanced talks on a submarine manufacturing deal worth at least $8 billion, set to become India's largest ever defense agreement. The pact, being finalized ahead of German Chancellor Friedrich Merz's first visit to India next week, would for the first time include technology transfer for submarine production. Under the proposal, Germany's ThyssenKrupp Marine Systems will partner Mazagon Dock shipbuilders to build advanced submarines here in India, potentially replacing New Delhi's plan to buy more French vessels. Submarines will feature air-dependent propulsion, allowing longer underwater endurance. The deal would significantly boost India's naval capability in the Indian Ocean amid China's growing presence there. Merz is also expected to hold talks with Prime Minister Narendra Modi in Gujarat and Bengaluru, with defence, pharmaceuticals and European Union India free trade talks also on his agenda. Bangladesh has tightened visa restrictions for Indian nationals, extending the curbs to its deputy high commissions in Kolkata, Mumbai and Chennai. Dhaka's foreign ministry has confirmed that all the visa categories except for business and employment visas have now been suspended. Consular and visa services have been completely halted in Kolkata, while tourist and other visa services for Indians have also been suspended at Bangladesh missions in Mumbai and Chennai. Officials say the decision has been taken on security grounds amid ongoing diplomatic tensions between India and Bangladesh. The latest move builds on earlier curbs imposed on December 22nd when the visa services were suspended at the Bangladesh High Commission in New Delhi, as well as missions in Agartala, Siliguri and Guwahati. With this expansion, visa access for Indian nationals is now severely limited, largely to business and only employment purposes. According to a Reuters report, India's finance ministry is considering easy restrictions on Chinese companies bidding for government contracts amid signs of improving ties between New Delhi and Beijing. Government sources have said that officials are working on scrapping 5-year-old curbs imposed in 2020 after the deadly India-China Galwan border clash. Those rules require Chinese firms to seek political and security clearances, effectively keeping them out of the Indian government contracts worth an estimated $700 to $750 billion. Sources say multiple ministries have flagged project delays and shortages, prompting a review. The final call, however, will rest with the Prime Minister's office. Markets reacted nervously to it, with BHEL and L&T shares slipping on the fears of renewed Chinese competition. The move comes as India and China step up engagement, even as New Delhi maintains a cautious stance on Chinese FDI. So India and China is looking for a reset as far as their relationship is concerned. According to a latest report which has been released by Reuters, we've been given to understand that India's finance ministry is now planning to ease down the curbs and restrictions on Chinese companies which are eyeing at the Indian market and bidding for government contracts amid the signs of improving ties between the two nations. Restrictions were put in place after the deadly Galwan clash back in the year of 2020. Now, the government sources have suggested that they are working on scrapping 5-year-old curbs imposed in 2020, and those rules required Chinese firms to seek political and security clearances, effectively keeping them out of Indian government contracts worth an estimated $700 to $750 billion. But now some new rules will be implemented to ease out such curbs. Multiple ministries, in fact, have also flagged project delays and shortages, prompting a review in the matter, although the final call remains with Prime Minister's office. And a statement on this entire matter from the PMO is also awaited. India's economy is expected to grow at around 7.5% in 2025 to 26, slightly higher than the 7.4% estimate put out by the National Statistics Office, according to a report by the State Bank of India. The NSO's first advance estimates peg growth sharply higher than last year's 6.5%, while the RBI has projected 7.3%. SBI says the gap between NSO and RBI estimates is historically small and believes growth carries an upward bias, with revisions expected when the second advance estimates are released in February 2026. Speaking of the public finances, the report says the fiscal deficit stood at 62.3% of the budget estimate by November, while tax revenues may undershoot. Stronger non-tax revenue and lower spending are expected to keep the fiscal deficit at 4.4% of GDP, broadly in the line with budget targets. Union Minister Ashwini Vaishnaw has held talks with the senior Nvidia officials on developing sovereign graphics processing units and manufacturing advanced data processing devices here in India. Nvidia currently dominates the global GPU market, as we all know, with over 80% share, and also its chips are very critical for powering artificial intelligence systems. Ashwini Vaishnaw said discussions focused on locally built edge devices, including Nvidia's DGX Sparks, a compact AI system which is capable of delivering 1 petaflop performance without requiring internet connectivity, making it suitable for sectors like railways, healthcare and also education. The government is backing domestic AI capacity through the India AI mission, deploying 38,000 GPUs so far at subsidized rates. India aims to develop its own GPU within 3 to 4 years, while also supporting the startups building native AI engines and strengthening the country's AI ecosystem. that, we are stepping into a very short commercial break. Do stay with us. We'll come right back.
इम्तियाज जी के फादर को बीमारी के कारण अचानक हॉस्पिटल में एडमिट होना पड़ा। पॉलिसी बाजार की टीम ने हॉस्पिटल पहुंचकर लाखों का क्लेम अप्रूव करवाने में पूरी हेल्प की। पॉलिसी बाजार पर 1 करोड़ का हेल्थ इंश्योरेंस सिर्फ 550 रुपए महीने से शुरू।
भारत माता के करोड़ों संतानों का अजय स्वाभिमान है श्री सोमनाथ महादेव की पावन धरती। वर्ष 1026 से सोमनाथ का विध्वंस करने की कुटिल कोशिशें बार बार हुई, लेकिन ये विध्वंस की नहीं, 1000 साल की अटूट आस्था की गाथा है। अनगिनत सनातनियों ने सर्वोच्च बलिदान दिया। उसी सनातनी शौर्य के 1000 वर्षों का महापर्व है सोमनाथ स्वाभिमान पर्व, जिसमें गूंजेगा 72 घंटों का अखंड ओमकार, बहेगी आध्यात्मिक संगीत की रसधार और आकाश में ड्रोन शो के जरिए जीवंत होगी श्री सोमनाथ की आदि अनंत महागाथा। प्रधानमंत्री श्री नरेंद्र मोदी की उपस्थिति में सोमनाथ की सांस्कृतिक गौरव यात्रा के साक्षी बने सोमनाथ स्वाभिमान पर्व।
US officials have discussed the idea of sending lump sum payments to Greenlanders as part of a push to encourage the Arctic territory to break away from Denmark and potentially join the United States. According to Reuters sources, the proposal has been floated internally, though no final decision has been taken yet. More in our next report. Take a look.
U.S. officials have discussed sending lump sum payments to Greenlanders as part of a bid to convince them to secede from Denmark and potentially join the United States. That's according to 4 sources familiar with the matter. While the exact dollar figure and logistics of any payment are unclear, 2 of the sources said the figures ranged anywhere from $10,000 to $100,000. The idea of directly paying residents of Greenland, an overseas territory of Denmark, offers one explanation of how the U.S. might attempt to buy the island of 57,000 people. President Donald Trump has said the U.S. needs to acquire the island for several reasons, including for its minerals and for national security. Authorities in Copenhagen and Nuuk have asserted that Greenland is not for sale.
I guess my advice to European leaders and anybody else would be to take the President of the United States seriously.
U.S. Vice President J.D. Vance on Thursday said acquiring Greenland is important to the U.S.
So what we're asking our European friends to do is to take the security of that landmass more seriously, because if they're not, the United States is going to have to do something about it.
Leaders throughout Europe have reacted to Trump's comments with disdain, particularly given that the U.S. and Denmark are NATO allies, bound by a mutual defense agreement. France, Germany, Italy, Poland, Spain, Britain, and Denmark issued a joint statement this week, saying only Greenland and Denmark can decide matters regarding their relations. Here's European Union Foreign Policy Chief Kaja Kallas on Thursday.
Of course, the messages that we hear regarding Greenland are extremely concerning, and we have had discussions also among the Europeans. If this is a real threat, and if it is, then what would be our response?
Porque es evidente que vivimos en un mundo nuevo.
Spanish Prime Minister Pedro Sanchez on Thursday said his country denounced what he called a threat to the territorial integrity of a European state.
It is evident that we live in a new world, a world that is even more multipolar, more hostile, more disorderly.
Más desordenado.
One source said White House aides were eager to carry over the momentum from the Maduro operation toward accomplishing Trump's other long-standing geopolitical goals. The Danish embassy declined to comment, and Greenland's representative office in Washington did not respond to a request for comment.
U.S. Vice President J.D. Vance has urged European nations to take the security of Greenland more seriously as President Donald Trump renews calls for greater U.S. control over the Arctic island. Speaking at the White House briefing, J.D. Vance said Europe must step up its role, comments that have drawn sharp reactions from Denmark and other European leaders who stress that Greenland's future lies with Denmark and its people, not external pressure from a NATO ally.
I guess my advice to European leaders and anybody else would be to take the President of the United States seriously. What has he said about Greenland? Set to the side the crazy overreactions that I've seen from the press and from certain people in Europe. What has the President said? Number one, Greenland is really important, not just to America's missile defense, but to the world's missile defense. Number two, we know that there are hostile adversaries that have shown a lot of interest in that particular territory, that particular slice of the world. So what we're asking our European friends to do is to take the security of that landmass more seriously, because if they're not, the United States is going to have to do something about it. What that is, I'll leave that to the President as we continue to engage in diplomacy with our European friends and everybody on this particular topic.
U.S. oil major Chevron is in talks with the U.S. government to expand its license to operate in Venezuela, aiming to boost crude oil exports to its own refineries and sell to the other buyers. The discussions are part of a broader effort to move Venezuelan oil onto global markets and encourage American investment in the country's energy sector, with Chevron currently the only U.S. oil major operating under an exemption from sanctions.
The U.S. government may allow oil giant Chevron to increase its crude exports from Venezuela. That's according to 4 sources, who told Reuters the two are in talks about expanding a license the company has to operate in the South American country. The change would allow Chevron to boost exports to its own refineries and sell oil to other buyers. The talks come as Washington and Caracas continue discussions about supplying up to 50 million barrels of Venezuelan oil to the United States, and as President Donald Trump presses American oil companies to invest in Venezuela's energy sector. U.S. officials have said this week that proceeds from the Venezuelan oil supply will go to a U.S. overseen trustee. Proceeds are meant to finance supplies of American goods to Venezuela. Chevron is the only U.S. oil major operating in Venezuela, which it does under an authorization from the U.S. government that exempts it from sanctions on the country. As part of its sanction-hardening campaign to weaken Venezuelan President Nicolas Maduro, the Trump administration in July put additional restrictions on Chevron's license. Those restrictions reduced the volume of Venezuelan crude the company is exporting to the U.S. by 60%. The restrictions also deprived Venezuelan state-run oil company PDVSA of any proceeds from Chevron's exports. The license expansion would allow Chevron to go back to previous export levels, while providing Venezuelan crude to business partners that could allocate the oil to destinations other than the U.S., as the company used to do in the past. Sources said Washington is also pushing to have other U.S. companies involved in oil exports from Venezuela, including refiner Valero Energy, which was a customer of Venezuela's PDVSA before the sanctions. The U.S. is also pushing to get oil majors ExxonMobil and ConocoPhillips involved as well. Their Venezuelan assets were expropriated 2 decades ago. Chevron, Valero, Exxon, and Conoco did not immediately reply to requests for comment.
The United Nations has expressed regret over the U.S. decision to withdraw from dozens of UN bodies after President Donald Trump said Washington would exit several international organizations, including a key climate treaty and the UN Agency for Women's Empowerment, citing national interest concerns. UN Secretary General Antonio Guterres, through his spokesperson, noted that U.S. funding for many of these entities is mandatory as they are backed by the regular UN budget. The UN also said it has not yet received any formal notification from the Trump administration, adding that withdrawals from treaty bodies would require official written notice.
The Secretary General regrets the announcement by the White House regarding the United States' decision to withdraw from a number of United Nations entities. As we have consistently said and underscored, assess contributions to the United Nations regular budget and the peacekeeping budget as approved by the General Assembly are legal obligations under the United Nations Charter for every member state, including the United States. All United Nations entities will go on with the implementation of their mandates as given to us by member states. The United Nations has a responsibility to deliver for all those who depend on us, and we will continue to carry out our mandates with determination.
Australian Prime Minister Anthony Albanese has announced that a Royal Commission inquiry will be launched into the Bondi Beach mass shooting that killed 15 people. Calling it the country's most powerful public inquiry, Albanese said the attack at a Jewish Hanukkah celebration was not just an act of terrorism but an assault on all the Australians.
Australian Prime Minister Anthony Albanese on Thursday announced a Royal Commission inquiry into the Bondi Beach mass shooting, the country's most powerful public inquiry.
Of course, a Royal Commission is not the beginning or the end of what Australia must do to eradicate anti-Semitism or protect ourselves from terrorism or strengthen our social cohesion. That's an ongoing national effort for all of us as individuals, but also institutions, because an attack on Jewish Australians is an attack on all Australians.
15 people were killed in the mass shooting at a Jewish Hanukkah celebration at Sydney's famed Bondi Beach on December 14th, fueling calls for tougher gun control and stronger action against anti-Semitism. Police say the alleged father and son perpetrators were inspired by the Islamic State militant group. Albanese had initially resisted calls to set up a royal commission, saying the process would take years. That led to criticism from Jewish groups and victims' families, who urged him to reconsider.
This Royal Commission is the right format, the right duration, and the right terms of reference to deliver the right outcome for our national unity and our national security.
The Royal Commission, which will be led by retired Judge Virginia Bell, is a government inquiry that can compel people to give evidence. It will consider the events of the shooting as well as anti-Semitism and social cohesion in Australia, with a report expected late in the year.
Wall Street closed mixed on Thursday as technology stocks slipped while defense shares advanced after President Donald Trump called for a $1.5 trillion military budget. The Dow rose over 0.5% and the S&P 500 ended flat and the Nasdaq fell just under 0.5%. Take a look.
Wall Street ended mixed on Thursday, with the Dow gaining more than 0.5%, the S&P 500 flat, and the Nasdaq shedding just under 0.5%. Shares of major tech companies, including Nvidia, Broadcom, and Microsoft, declined as investors grew more finicky about AI-related stocks whose valuations have been inflated by outsized gains. Shana Orsic-Sissel, founder and CEO of Bonrian Capital Management, said investors will likely become increasingly selective as the AI trade progresses.
2025 started as the year of AI. 2026 is going to be more of the same, but I do think that we're going to start to see more clear winners and losers. My focus is less on the folks who are trying to build AI tools for consumers and need to monetize that technology. I'm much more interested in the companies that are part of the infrastructure of AI, the folks who make the chips, the folks who are involved in data center development, energy efficiency at the data center level, and anything related to the infrastructure of AI.
Still, shares of Alphabet gained on Thursday, a day after the Google parent surpassed Apple in market capitalization for the first time since 2019 to become the second most valuable U.S. company. Among other stock moves, shares of defense companies gained after President Trump said the 2027 U.S. military budget should be $1.5 trillion, much higher than the roughly $900 billion approved by Congress for 2026. Shares of Northrop Grumman added more than 2%, Lockheed Martin rose more than 4%, and Kratos Defense jumped almost 14%. Traders now turn their attention to Friday's crucial non-farm payrolls report for December, one of the first reliable economic data sets since the record-long government shutdown.
US chipmaker Nvidia is requiring full upfront payment from Chinese customers seeking its H200 artificial intelligence chips. The move reflects uncertainty over Beijing's approval of shipments, prompting Nvidia to impose unusually strict terms, including no cancellations, refunds, or order changes.
Nvidia is reportedly requiring full upfront payment from Chinese customers seeking its H200 AI chips. Two sources told Reuters it's due to ongoing uncertainty over Beijing's approval of the shipments. They said the US chipmaker has imposed unusually strict terms, including full payment for orders with no options to cancel, ask for refunds or change configurations after placement. Nvidia and China's industry ministry have yet to respond to requests for comment. Last month, Reuters reported Chinese tech firms have placed orders for more than 2 million H200 chips, priced at around $27,000 each. That exceeds Nvidia's inventory of 700,000 of the chips. While Chinese chip makers have developed AI processors, their performance still lags behind Nvidia's H200 for large-scale training of advanced AI models. Bloomberg reported Thursday that China plans to approve some H200 imports as soon as this quarter. The report said Chinese officials are preparing to allow purchases for select commercial uses, but will ban purchases by the military, sensitive government agencies, critical infrastructure, and state-owned enterprises due to security concerns.
From World Liberty Financial's next steps to Barclays taking a stake in Ubix, the crypto sector has seen several key developments this week. This next report tells you about the moves shaping markets, regulation and investor sentiment in the global crypto space. Take a look.
From World Liberty Financial's next steps to Barclays' stake in Ubix, this is Crypto Weekly. World Liberty Financial, the crypto venture backed by the family of Donald Trump, said its subsidiary had filed an application with US banking regulators. It's to establish a national trust bank focused on stablecoin operations. Several major crypto firms recently secured preliminary approval from federal banking authorities to establish national trust banks. It marks a significant step in integrating digital assets into the regulated banking system. Morgan Stanley is seeking regulatory approval to launch exchange-traded funds tied to the price of crypto tokens. That's according to filings with the US Securities and Exchange Commission, and is the first such move by a big US bank. According to the filing, the ETFs will be tied to the price of Bitcoin and Solana. Michael Saylor's strategy had a $17.4 billion unrealized loss on digital assets in the fourth quarter. It was tied to a decline in the value of the company's cryptocurrency stockpile. Shares of the largest corporate holder of Bitcoin slumped just over 47% last year as investors reacted to swings in crypto markets. Barclays has bought a stake in US stablecoin settlement company Ubix. The investment is part of its plans to explore new forms of digital money. Ubix launched last year and is a clearing system for stablecoins.
Well, that's all we have to pack it up on the show as of now. Do stay tuned to News 9. Big news and developments will be followed up here on the other side.
जब 25 साल के प्रत्युष का किडनी का ऑपरेशन हुआ तो पॉलिसी बाजार की टीम ने हॉस्पिटल पहुंचकर 12 लाख का क्लेम अप्रूव करवाने में पूरी हेल्प की। पॉलिसी बाजार पर 1 करोड़ का हेल्थ इंश्योरेंस सिर्फ 550 रुपए महीने से शुरू।